Hello friends, Swagatam, Namaskar and greetings of the day. On behalf of the National Joint Secretary of Eltai, Dr. Ramkishan Bise, the President of Eltai Mumbai chapter, Dr. Sachin Bumbe, we, Dr. Sushila Vijay Kumar and Mr. Anwar Sheikh, the Vice Presidents of Eltai Mumbai chapter, take this opportunity of extending a grand welcome to our resource person, Dr. Milind Pandit, our dynamic and enthusiastic executive members, donor members, life members, and short-term members of Eltai Mumbai chapter, and all other delegates, both teachers and learners from India and abroad. Beginning with the hope that all are safe at home and are surely super busy with upskilling and updating themselves, what with the various online opportunities for professional growth through innumerable webinars, virtual FDPs, orientations, refreshers, and conferences over a period of 3 months, let me proceed to give a quick overview of the Mumbai chapter of English Language Teachers Association of India. Inaugurated on 15th April 2017, Eltai Mumbai chapter helps in the professional development of English teachers by organizing various national and international workshops and seminars. With a firm belief in lifelong learning, the dedicated members of the Mumbai Eltai family strive to cooperate and collaborate with each other in the creation, dissemination, and enhancement of knowledge in the domains of English language, literature, and research. Our Mumbai chapter conducted two national workshops entitled The Changing Dynamics of Teaching English in the Digital Age by Dr. Ilango, the National Secretary of Eltai, Dr. Dinesh Kumar, and Dr. Meera Bharwani. Mrs. Lalita Murthy, ex-consultant language and culture training, Tata Consultancy Services, was a resource person for our second national workshop on enhancing professional skills from a teacher to a trainer. Our chapter also organized an international workshop on research methodology in language and literature, wherein a galaxy of experts like Dr. K. Venkata Reddy from FLU Hyderabad, Dr. Usha Chandel Madam from GACC Indore, Dr. Ashok Sachdeva from Devi Vidyalaya Indore, guided both the teachers and postgraduate learners on the many means and methodologies of beginning research. This year, we planned 3 varied activities, a series of lectures, webinars, and a year-long project on action research. The opening batsman for the lecture series launched at IDOL Mumbai University was Dr. Sachin Labde, who shed light on research avenues in English language teaching. Even before the pandemic, we had our first webinar by Dr. Anusha Ramanathan, whose talk provoked the teachers to dwell on the need and significance of rubrics in the assessment process. The second webinar was by Dr. Sushila Vijay Kumar, whose talk on Bollywood and its others biopics drew attention to the emerging genre of biopics within the multilingual fabric of Indian cinema. Today, we are both excited and elated that Dr. Milind Pandit, our resource person, will enlighten us on the subaltern theory and the role of English language, a post-colonial context, which is the third webinar in the series. A third interesting activity in the pipeline is our plan for a year-long, focused, collaborative project on action research, wherein we are inviting teachers to plan, implement, record, and share their classroom teaching learning experiences, thereby adding to the knowledge base. Finally, we appeal to all our dear virtual delegates to like and subscribe to the Facebook page of Eltai Mumbai chapter. We promise to keep you posted regarding our plans and actions. We look forward to connecting and collaborating with many of you with potential and prospective plans for the enhancement of the knowledge and skill sets of teachers, learners, and researchers. May I request one of our executive members to share the Facebook link in the chat box? After the warm welcome, my friends, may I request Dr. Geeta Ajit, an assistant professor, resource person for English appointed by the State Board of Maharashtra, a trainer in soft skills, the editor of 2 newsletters, and chief editor of a journal, to introduce the resource person of the day, Dr. Milind Pandit, and also moderate the session. Over to you, Dr. Geeta Ajit, madam.
Thank you so much, Sushila.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Um, now, today, as we remain imprisoned and confined within our spaces of our living quarters, it is also a reminder for those who have been imprisoned spiritually and confined within their class, the subaltern class. It is of great importance that we realize the confines of this class, their past, present, and future, and also the role of English in their path of transition. To speak to us on this topic, we are fortunate today to have a distinguished personage with us, which is Dr. Milind Pandit. Dr. Milind Pandit is currently an associate professor and head at MSS Arts, Science and Commerce College, Jalna, and also a research supervisor and guide at Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Aurangabad, where he presently has 5 research scholars under him. He has also served as a resource person to many central and state universities to deliver lectures on both academic and social grounds. He has also been the keynote and valedictory speaker at various national and international seminars, conferences, workshops, and refresher courses. Having a number of publications under his wing, he has published many research papers in reputed international and national journals and books. Dr. Pandit has also published 2 books, of which one has been authored by him and the other edited by him. He has also worked as an editor and peer reviewer of international journals and has been an associate editor of national journal titled Innovative Research. His research paper titled Representing the Plight of Dalits and Women, a study of Sharan Kumar Limbali's Hindu, has been published by a central university, Mehu, in India. Currently, he is working on translation of the book Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar for Non-Dalits. Speaking of positions, he holds numerous positions. He is a member of the Board of Studies for English at Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University and has served in the position of Chief Superintendent and Chairman of Paper Setting Panel in more than one university. He is also the resource person at Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Dr. Pandit is also a recipient of a number of awards, namely Krantiba Jyotiba Phule State Level Ideal Teacher Award in 2016, the youngest recipient of the Best Service as Teacher Award of Matsodari Shikshan Sansa Jalna in 2015, the recipient of the Founding Ideal Teacher Award of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University in 2014, the recipient of Shri Vasantrao Kale Memorial Award in 2013 for the best services as a teacher. It is said that a great leader's courage to fulfill his vision comes from his passion and not his position. And this is said by Doc Maxwell. And today we have our esteemed speaker, Dr. Pandit, whose ambition is to be a teacher who wishes to bring about a revolution in the country, both intellectually and academically. It is indeed such a pleasure to have such an illustrious personality with us today. I welcome you, sir, to deliver your lecture on the subaltern theory and the role of English in post-colonial context. We are really very fortunate to have you with us today. And I hand over to you. It's all over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ms. Geeta Ajit, for being so generous and kind at introducing me at length. And I feel absolutely overwhelmed by the kind of respect you people have showered upon me. Before I move any further, I would like to first of all place on record my sincere gratitude
Come over.
to Dr. Ram Bise, English Language Teachers Association of India, National Joint Secretary, Dr. Sachin Labde from University of Mumbai, Department of English, Dr. Sushila Vijay Kumar, Mr. Debraj Maulik, and yes, the person who is responsible in getting me here is Dr. Sachin Bhumbe, who is the president of Mumbai chapter of Eltai. He is a young and dynamic academic who has, in fact, brought this special honor to be conferred on me, and he maintained a lot of patience because he had been asking me to this event since the last week of April. I appreciate his patience. And yes, there are also other members of Eltai, Mumbai chapter. I'm afraid it's not possible for me to mention everyone. But yes, I am really so much grateful to each one of you for this opportunity, which is just honor and privilege both to me. May I have permission to share my screen, please?
Please share, sir.
Well, is there something wrong?
I don't think so. It's a mirror effect I can see.
I see a lot of screens opening here.
Menu
So
Debra.
Okay. Because you just stop the presentation 1 second. So you can do it once again. Yeah, yeah. Resume.
Shall I
Now
now?
you can start. Yeah, yeah. Please.
Well, it doesn't appear on the screen. I don't know what is technical issue there.
No, you're presenting, sir. It's visible.
But then I'm unable to share my PPT.
Okay, sir, there are 3 options. You can choose any of the 3. Entire screen, the second option, a Chrome tab, is like that. You can
I have chosen entire screen.
go for the second option, I guess.
Okay. Shall I
And
close this?
your window should be open. The PPT window should be open
Okay, okay.
separately. It should be open separately. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it should be open separately.
Okay.
Yes, it's visible, sir.
Okay. Shall I convert it
Yes.
into slideshow?
Yes, yes, it's up to you. Not an issue.
Okay. Am I visible now and am I audible?
Yes.
More importantly, even if I'm not visible, that's okay. I should be
Yeah, it's
audible.
on, sir. Audio video is perfectly fine, sir, in synchronization.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Maulik.
Yes.
As the
Pleasure, sir.
topic determined upon is the subaltern theory and role of English language, a post-colonial context. I would like to just begin with the basics. And the basics I would like to begin with these that are before your eyes. I would like to begin with the definition of the theory. This is the definition that the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, that is the 10th edition, puts inside it. A formal set of ideas that is intended to explain why something happens or exists. The second definition I have picked up is from the Wikipedia, and it is, there are certain words like contemplative and rational type of abstract or generalizing thinking about a phenomenon or the results of such thinking. The process of contemplative and rational thinking often is associated with such processes like observational study, research. Here are certain words that I find important. For example, contemplative and rational type of abstract or generalizing thinking. And there's a phenomenon. The third definition I have picked is from Cambridge Advanced Learners Dictionary. But I would like to fit your attention to what Homi Bhabha, in his response to, say, theory, wants to say. This is from his paper called, or his expression called, Commitment to Theory, which is published in Norton Anthology of Criticism and Theory. There's a damaging and self-defeating assumption that theory is necessarily the elite language of the socially and culturally privileged. It said that the place of the academic critic is inevitably within the Eurocentric archives of an imperialist or neoclassical West. What he has especially pointed out is, in fact, the elite language of socially and culturally privileged. See, we, as usual, find that most of the critical concepts or the concepts of any kind of theory, they have been part of, say, the Eurocentric world. Mostly it is the Europeans and Americans that, in fact, start determining the prospects of the research, theory, ideology, everything that goes on, even in a place like India. So here, I would like to say that we need not go for the measures and standards set by the Eurocentric world. And we always, I mean, this is my usual argument that we have had many of the origins, or say, of theory, ideology, and certain kinds of ideas that have been so valuable. But mostly what happens is our academics tend to depend upon this Eurocentric world. And what Bhabha has said is more important, that we need not go for this kind of attitude. I would like to move upon also to these factors here. What is important for me is the division between critical and literary theories. Usually, we find that the candidates, particularly the students, tend to get confused between, say, literary theory and critical theory. Critical theory has been a broad concept. It's a broad level concept as compared to literary theory. And when it comes to literary theory, we find that it is a systematic study of the nature and evaluation of literature. But nowadays we have entered such a kind of environment, academic environment in particular, that everything seems to be, multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary for that matter. Literature is not literature as it used to be in the past. And till, say, the first part of the 20th century, we find that literature and literary criticism shared a very close connection. And of course, there were certain customary standards which were never trespassed by, say, the readers or the theorists for that matter. And as and when the time started passing on, we find that it was in the latter half of the 20th century that there was a kind of revolution in the area of theory. I mean, in particular, critical theory. And that, of course, had certain relations with literary theory, and literary theory developed marvelously later on. So there onwards, we find that during this postmodern time, we have a lot many theories for us, whether literary or critical. And then We have such schools which I wouldn't like to read because they are before your very eyes. Recently, I have gone through a book called Post Theory, which is edited by Milind and others. In that, what Besley says, I mean, she is a contributor to this text, and her name is Catherine Belsey. And what she says is quite surprising, and I was taken by great surprise, of course, while going through her essay. And what she says is, we are witnessing the end of literary criticism. What I suddenly knew in a blinding flash was that literary criticism is a thing of the past, and that we have entered irreversibly a new epoch. My concern here is to propose a place in the new English studies for a closer attention to the signifier. When I was going through Catherine Belsey, I mean, the title of her essay being English Studies in the Postmodern Condition Towards a Place for the Signifier. What she argues in her essay is there has been a history of literary criticism and theory for about 120 years. And she says it is nothing but reading for the sake of reading. That means she has opened a new vista for the discussions upon, say, critical and literary theories, in particular literary theory. We also have a concept like post-feminism. And as we have already gone through as many as 4 phases of feminism, nowadays we find that we are passing through the phase of post-feminism. So post-theory, post-feminism are the concepts that have been introduced nowadays, and it is said as if it is going to be the end of theory. And again, it put a question to me as to how far it could be quite sensible to again think of theory that way. But of course, as we all understand, there are individual interpretations, there are individual meanings, and of course, assessment we find belonging to everyone. So with this, I would like to move on to the subaltern theory. My discussion would be divided into 2 parts. The first part would be dealing with the subaltern theory and post-colonial theory, and the second part would be, based upon the discussion of language. I do not know if I would be able to cover everything that I have prepared, but definitely shall I do my best to justify everything and to manage everything within, say, maybe 1 odd hour. The subaltern has been defined again by that dictionary as an officer in the British Army who's lower in rank than a captain. So here, lower in rank is those are the 3 words that are important. And then when we go to the Wikipedia, we find that it tells us that this concept, as was originated by Antonio Gramsci when he was inside jail, his prison notebooks have given a reference or birth to the nomenclature called the subaltern. And as we do understand, this word has been later on referred to, say, for example, the social classes, especially the lower social classes. And then there are also the other social groups that live on the margins of the society. And again, it is an issue of the colony. I would like to again put my individual opinion here, and it is, for example, can the component of the subaltern be applicable to the Indian context? Because mostly what happens is what is born in, say, a continent like Europe or America, for that matter, has been picked up by our scholars and academicians, and of course experimented with in Indian context. So I'm not sure if that could be a good idea to do. Yes, we should always try to experience every kind of neologism as far as the discourses, academic discourses or literary discourses are concerned. But then, can we not have precautions while applying them to our context? That is the question I always feel like asking of myself as well as the others. So, Subaltern again is a case of that. Here we have Peter Childs and Roger Fowler who are going to again have their opinion expressed. What they say is, taken together with his more fluid conceptualization of class-state relations, his development of a methodological program for studying the history of the subaltern placed greater emphasis on the cultural and ideological dimensions of hegemony and subordination. So here I would like to again think that Antonio Gramsci had used this concept to refer to the working masses of his own country, that is Italy. He happened to be an Italian Marxist. Then the question is, can we really have the ideas of Antonio Gramsci derived and applied to our own context? Can't we think that the conditions and contexts of application of these theories can be different? But then again, I should say that it is left to each and every individual as to think what is good, what is applicable, and what is worthy to be put into practice. But then again, I would like to go for Julian Wolfries and his associates, who have produced a text in which they comment upon the term of subaltern. I mean, they have produced a text on literary terms. And in that, they try to widen the scope of this term, that is subaltern. And they try to make it more inclusive and comprehensive. But still, I didn't find, their meditation in this area that satisfactory. But whatever, since we are here to deal with the subaltern theory, we shall have it as a hypothesis of our discussion and then move on. What Julian Wolfries and his associates or co-authors say is the proletarian working class groups, dominated and marginalized groups could be covered under the umbrella called subaltern. I don't know if subaltern can really function as an umbrella term, particularly in the context like that of India. With these, I would like to again directly go to Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, because she has been basically credited with the theory of subalternity. There are two things that we find. One is the theory and the other it is studies. And we have the subaltern studies groups, or the group which has been led by Ranjit Guha. And there are people like Shahid Amin, Dipesh Chakravarti, Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, and then also we find there are some others. So this group, which consists of around 12 odd people, has produced certain insights in this area. And when I went through this subaltern collective, particularly when I went through the research article of Mr. Shahid Amin, I found that what he wrote was never appropriate so far as exploration of the concept of subaltern was concerned. Because what he wrote was all about, say, the independence struggle. He related his article to Gandhian movement and participation of the peasants in that movement. Again, it's a matter of individual point of view, individual perspective. What he wrote in that was never appealing to me. I didn't find it appealing. But then I also went through certain other articles, and I could not find myself engaged with the kind of discourse that was brought about in, say, the subaltern studies. So on the one hand, we have the theory, which is the framework of development of discussions, and on the other, we have the subalterns as subjects being explored, or certain experiences and ideas about them, produced by this group in that series of the subaltern studies. Ranjit Guha makes a lot of sense. I mean, when we go through the first text produced by, say, Ranjit Guha, which has been introductory to that series, it really is a very good account of, of dealing with, say, the lower stratum of society and getting understood the ideas and concepts related to that stratum. But whatever, here we have Can the Subaltern Speak, which is an essay running into as many as 52 pages, I suppose. And it has its keywords like power, desire, interest. And mostly we find that this essay is based upon Michel Foucault, G. Deleuze, Felix Guattari, and Karl Marx. I mean, these are, in fact, the four say theorists upon which Gayatri Spivak bases her discourse and explores with the help of them. I have just pointed out certain statements that she has put in while taking this theory ahead. See, the first statement, and one more thing I would like to add here is Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak seems to be say, for example, somewhere contradictory. I mean, self-contradictory, we can say. For example, the first statement when we account for is, since theory is also only action, the theoretician does not represent or speak for the oppressed group. Indeed, the subject is not seen as a representative consciousness, one representing reality adequately. Now, when I move further, I shall again point your attention to another point which runs counter to this. I mean, it is difficult to slightly guess as to why these two statements have been incorporated in the same discourse, in the same essay by her. And then the second premise of hers has been, the leftist intellectuals do not represent the subaltern properly. See, here again, I would like to invite your attention to the fact that, yes, most of the theories have been produced by the leftist intellectuals. And then the issue of the countries like India has not been basically the class. Ours is always a caste struggle. And as far as this caste struggle is concerned, I think class comes secondarily. It functions secondarily in our country. And possibly Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak has that kind of phenomenon on her mind, which is why she says these intellectuals do not represent the subaltern properly. Then we have another statement by her. Their representative must appear simultaneously as their master, as an authority over them, as unrestricted governmental power that protects them from the other classes and sends them rain and sunshine from above. This is good that the subalterns should have their own representative. But the kind of freedom Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak wants to attribute to this person, this leader, of course, makes one think if this can be the real way to empower the subalterns. For example, in my last lecture, I had referred to Pedagogy of the Oppressed, a text by Paulo Freire, who is a Brazilian, say, thinker. And he has very often mentioned a fact that the oppressed can sometimes be possibly the oppressors when they start finding freedom for themselves, freedom from oppression for that matter. So when I remember Freire here, this question comes into my mind as if, the subaltern cannot be the oppressor of tomorrow. So freedom like this can also carry certain dangers for the subalterns themselves. Then we have also a very good point made by Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, and she says that whenever it is an issue of bravery, courage, etc., it is only the male, that has been always put at the center. Now, why can't women be brave? Then again, the issue is that because women have always been subalternized. Rather than calling them subaltern, I would prefer to say that women are subalternized that way. And she does not like this idea. And then what she says is they do not have their own history. And female is always found in shadow, and this is where she strongly champions the cause of women in this essay. Now when it comes to say uh, widow, I mean, when a feminist is speaking, she should be speaking for a long time for the rights of women. But again, Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, while expanding her ideas, finds herself somehow in a conundrum or maybe some kind of confusion. Like she makes such a statement which is before your eyes, and it is statement number 6. She says, self-immolation of the widows was not an invariable ritual prescription. So I do not understand why she calls it a real free choice. Sometimes a theorist, say, I remember the words of a candidate from JNU. I wouldn't like to mention the name of that candidate. And he had said once that I appreciate the students and I congratulate them on having exercised their democratic right of not going to the class and attending lectures. And this is their democratic right. I mean, there's also a story written by A.G. Gardiner, Rule of the Road, or The Rule of the Road, in which he has tried to imply one fact, that democracy does not mean the freedom to do anything. There are certain limitations to, say, democratic freedom. And interpretations also have their own limitations. If you, for example, make such a statement that the students have exercised their democratic right to keep off the class, I do not understand as to what kind of democratic right. I mean, yes, democratic right it is, whether to attend the classes or not. But what about its interpretation? So sometimes when a theorist or maybe a thinker thinks from the point of view of one aspect, that thinker simply goes on maybe empirically and forgets that there are also certain ideas that bring about undercurrents of interpretation. But then here, I do not understand as to why Gayatri Spivak could be saying the things like that. And at the end, realizing she says that she is not in favor of killing of widows at all. So this is again a self-contradictory statement that we find here. Then she speaks about the elites. Now there are elites which are, number one, dominant foreign groups. Number two, dominant indigenous groups on the all India level, dominant indigenous groups at the regional and local levels. We all understand that the social hierarchy is always dominated by these elites. You find them out and you will realize, yes, the strings of cultural dominance have always been into the hands of these people. It is these people that pull the full strings so far as cultural domination is concerned. And then what she actually speaks about is that she is very much interested in releasing these subalterns from, say, the clutches of these culturally dominant groups, whether they are foreigners or indigenous, or maybe at the regional levels. And then what she does is she always tries to read the woman regardless of phallocentric tradition. She says that androcentric society has always suppressed women here, and she does not wish to allow, say, the male discourse at all while advocating the case of women as subaltern. And then what she says is, see, I was speaking about the first statement. Now, the third statement that the third point that you find here on screen, goes somehow in contradiction with the first statement that she made about theory. The model of resistance without a theory of ideology can lead to a dangerous utopianism. I don't know how far I have understood, the difference between the two sentences. But again, at the personal level, I find at the subjective, or more than that, I would like to say individual level, I have found that there is some kind of mismatch between the two statements. Now, the point of view, the crux of her essay is expressed here in the text, which is edited by Henry Schwartz and Sangeeta Ray. And she says, I never sought to correct Orientalism. My endeavor in Can the Subaltern Speak was to tell the story of Bhuvaneshwari Bhaduri and why she could not be heard, not to correct Said. Her name is never mentioned in the discussions of my essay. Now, this story I have told at certain places, and it is about Bhuvaneshwari Bhaduri, who had committed suicide. She was given the task of fighting against the British. There was a plot against the British. She was a young lady of 16 or 17 years, and she was given the task of killing someone. But then she could not do it, because she felt herself incapable of doing that. And she could not kill. She was, in fact, a widow, and then she wanted to save her face. And that is why she committed suicide. And then there are other issues that Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak discusses. She says she also waited for her menstruation so that her death, her suicide, could not be understood in a vilified light. So her theory of subalternity is completely based upon Bhuvaneshwari Bhaduri's incident. She discusses many other things that have been complementary to take her idea of subalternity ahead. But the gist or the crux of her essay has been the subject that is called Bhuvaneshwari Bhaduri. And she develops the framework, the question, can the subaltern speak? And ultimately she comes to conclude that the subaltern can speak, but they are not heard. They are not left, because Bhuvaneshwari Bhaduri wanted to tell the people that she is not able to take the task ahead, but there was nobody to listen to her. She tried to speak it out, but nobody listened to her. And then this incident actually influenced Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak very much, and that gave her the subject matter to develop the theory of subalternity that way. And it is with Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak that the concept of subaltern studies, or the concept of subaltern itself, started getting spread all across the academia. So this is how I would like to comment upon the theory of subaltern. And again, I would like to slightly discuss this component of the post-colonial theory. As I said, yes, on subaltern theory, there's a lot to speak about, because That essay, controversial as it is, it also has a rewarding experience as well. The more we read, the better insights we can find out of it. But then this is how the theory of subalternity was developed by her. We can have a discussion on it or questions upon it. Now I would like to move on to the post-colonial theory. And I very often argued that it is very difficult to locate the post-colonial in Indian context. Initially, we find that the colonizers were the people that were the Greeks and Romans. And in modern context, you find these people, mostly you find French and British. The French and the British. Now, these are the people, and even the Dutch, who actually started colonizing various countries. I had a very strange notion about France, that it was a country that spread the tenets of liberty, equality, and fraternity. And I was very much influenced by these principles of humanity whenever I studied history of Europe. But as I went through, say, Frantz Fanon's text, The Wretched of the Earth, I was disillusioned with the way of French philosophy. And the people that always believed in liberty, equality, fraternity could have their colonies established all around the world. And when we go through Fanon's times in Algeria, an African country, we find that the French behaved so cruelly with the Algerians, and that is what Fanon has especially exposed. He was a psychiatrist sent to Algeria to treat the people. And then, all my illusions about the French Revolution and the principles of, say, equality, fairness, greatness, etc., were cleared afterwards. And we have the major thinkers of the post-colonial times. I have picked up this definition from the Random House Dictionary of English. And it defines colonization like this: the policy of a nation seeking to extend or retain its authority over other peoples or territories. Any problem? Yes. Now, if colonialism is this, to establish or retain or extend authority over other peoples or territories, can we really say that it was only India or the countries like India that were colonized? Then I would like to defeat my own assumption. And I would like to say that even the countries like Greece, Rome or Italy, the United Kingdom, France, the United States of America, Australasia, Spain, etc., are the post-colonial countries. And yes, this can be debated at certain length as to how one can term these countries as, say, post-colonial countries. Because the common kind of idea that we have carried with us has been that it is only the Europeans that colonized others, but they were never colonized. But when we go into the history, ancient history, medieval, or say modern for that matter, we find that almost every country of the world suffered this aspect of colonization. And then, if it is the case, why should we call only India and the countries like India as post-colonial? And I have always a feeling of discomfort to call Indian literature of the post-independence times as post-colonial literature. Does it mean that the Americans were not colonized by the British? Or say, the Australian countries, were they far from being colonized? And I do not get to understand as to why only the countries like India or say Pakistan, Bangladesh, or say certain other countries, mostly from the continent of Africa, being called as post-colonial. Why do we always think the way the Eurocentric theory, the theorists think? Why can't we have? Why do we always follow suit? Why do we always follow their suit? Why don't we always think from a different angle? History will tell us that almost every country of the world was under colony. The issue is, it is only the post-British times that have been treated even partially as post-colonial. The Americans also suffered domination of the British, but nobody calls American literature as post-colonial. Why? So we have to also think of this. What is exactly the post-colonial, and when exactly can we place it, and where exactly can we place it? And by the way, we do understand that India is a country that has been very often colonized by, at least a dozen of foreigners, others. And we are simply getting stuck to the times of, post-British times as post-colonial times, post-colonial, or the times of post-colonial literature for that matter, post-colonial theory, etc. I always feel that we should also have our own ideas and theories developed through a different angle. So that way I would like to say I'm not satisfied with application of the post-colonial theory the way it is done, particularly to our country. In the case of our country, I mean. With this, I would like to move on to an interesting area, and it is that of, say, English. See, we have two clauses of the Constitution of India. One is 343, which offers English as the status of the official associate official language, and the other one is about the spread of Hindi as a national language of India. I have recently gone through a text called English in the Dalit Context, which is edited by Alladi Uma and others. This is a very interesting text, and that is the first article, which is written by Sabur Ali. He wants to discuss the issues of language with reference to Dalits of Tamil Nadu. He is from Tamil Nadu, and that is a very interesting article. The point that he raises in that article is, what are the instrumental benefits that a non-English language of India can afford us? I mean, that is the argument he has opened. I shall come to that later on, but before that I would like to fetch your attention to what David Crystal has said. So he says, no African country uses its indigenous language in higher education, English being used in the majority of cases. There are at least 45 African countries who have allowed English to be their official language. We also have the people like Ngugi wa Thiong'o who oppose the idea of education through English or through the English language. Despite that, we find that the African countries have continued English as their associate official language, or we can say official language itself. Now, there's a textbook written by David Crystal called Language Revolution. page number 20. This is the quote I have derived from. Then we have another one by him. In India, there are probably now more speakers of English than in the whole of Britain and the USA combined. So Indians form the largest population as the speakers of English is what comes out of this quote. This is the status of English in the world, we can say, particularly status of English in India. And then what he says further is again important. There are many other areas in which English has been essentially used. For example, politics, economics, press, advertising, then broadcasting, education, and communications. These are all dominated by English. In India, the problem is always there, and it is that of, whether to accept English or reject it. On the one hand, there is great fascination for English, and on the other, we find the people resist English very much. We are always in this dilemma. If you travel across India, you can come to realize this, that there are two sides about English. One that is favored, the other, opposing side. And then here I would like to again go back to that statement. English is a language that is less loved but used more. And French is a language that is loved more but used less. This is the difference between the English language and the French language, for that matter. Now, as far as my opinion is concerned, I would like to say that English could not be expelled from the borders of India, despite the fact that there was a special clause created to, say, for example, banish it from our country. So better it would be for us to go with it as an associate language. But then we understand that language happens to be a highly sensitive issue because culture is associated with it, and it's been a highly sensitive issue in our country. I would like to mention here Nissim Ezekiel, the very Indian poems. One poem, for example, and it is Goodbye Party to Miss Pushpa T.S. I remember when I had introduced this poem at an international level seminar conference, the people took great exception to that, and they presented their dislike for Nissim Ezekiel. And they say that Nissim Ezekiel always makes fun of the Indian speakers of English. I did not agree with this. That can be one kind of interpretation of Nissim Ezekiel. But the second interpretation to me was he tried to, give certain implications, or maybe he tried to imply certain things that we need have a proper awareness of English. And that is why he criticized the people in that poem. Again, it is a matter of individual interpretation. How one interprets a text depends upon one. We also have Braj Kacharu. Braj Kacharu penned an article called The Alchemy of English. I have not gone through the full-length article, but I went through the part of it which has been published by Bill Ashcroft and his co-editors in the Post-Colonial Studies Reader. And in that, he tries to say that English is an important language for us. R.K. Narayan also has written an essay upon English where he wanted Indian brand of English. That's a very good essay produced by him. Mulkraj Anand had also for some time supported the cause of English. I think particularly in relation to the statement of maybe Mr. Mulayam Singh Yadav, who had once you know, given a call to make Hindi as the national language of India. We cannot have one specific language as national. And this reminds me also of Dr. Ambedkar's speech in the Constituent Assembly, which has been significant on every count, uniting the Indians and doing away with the understanding and misunderstanding of them about, various factors that are associated with India. But one factor in that speech comes out is that of making India as a nation. So he puts a characteristic difference between a nation and a country. So he says that we are the people given to diverse cultures, diverse languages, and diverse regions. And we are a heterogeneous mass. We don't carry the sense of homogeneity in the aspects of culture, language, region, behavior, attitude, etc. And that is why we cannot be a nation that way. The European countries have been nation because they have one country, one language, and one culture. That is why it becomes for them quite possible to be a nation. So he said, the earlier we realize this, the better in our own interest. So since the issue of language has come out, I thought of getting back to that speech of Dr. Ambedkar. Then Bhagwan Das is a North Indian scholar who was born in, a lower community. It is that of the sweeping community, let us call. He was a person whose accent was such that everyone remembered him for his accent and scholarship that he used to express or he used to share with others in English. So what I mean to say is that these are the people like Ezekiel, Braj Kashru, A.K. Narayan, Mulkraj Anand, who had the elite background. But Bhagwan Das was someone who was who was from an absolutely neglected community that always sits at the lowest rung in our social hierarchy. He was as good as these elites were, and he kept on writing in English. Well, what I mean to say is now the statement by Sabur Ali. What he says is, according to the three-language formula, English and Hindi have equal status as the official languages of the Union. So, while it was pertinent to speak about the spread of both languages through the three-language formula, an attempt was made to make Hindi the national language of the country. So, in that text, that is English in the Dalit context, this appears upon page number 16. And he says that although there was a three-language formula, it did not succeed at all. So language functions still as a problem for us. If you communicate in English, the people on the one hand would appreciate your English communication, but on the other hand, you will also be in a position of facing criticism. So these are the scenes of English that I wanted to bring to your notice. Then we have a book called An Introduction to Modern English by Krishna Swami and Verma. I think both of them have got retired from the Central University of Hyderabad, maybe EFL University. In that, they have put in, the registers of language. For example, dialect, jargon, gutter, cant, argot, slang, code language, code switching. And then I got added, these three factors, that is pragmatic, speech act, and taboo. Speech act I derived from John Austin, from the text called How to Do Things with Words. Taboo we understand, but we find that most of us I mean, particularly in the educated atmosphere we find, are not aware of the registers of language, particularly when it comes to English. And while communicating in English, we mostly keep on speaking it subconsciously. I mean, we have two categories of speakers of English. One is the conscious speakers. And you would find that these conscious speakers always belong to the elite class. But the non-elite groups that communicate in English always are found communicating on a subconscious level. And this kind of categorization is not that much followed by them. I remember, an example of my teacher, Dr. Jilte, who is a well-known writer of Maharashtra and who has been recommended in the HSC syllabus curriculum and even in the university curricula. He once shared his experience with me, and he said, I had joined because he was next to my second merit at that time, way back, maybe some 30 odd years ago. And he said, I joined a school, high school, and the headmaster of my school was just an SSC, and I was an MA in English. I wrote an application of leave to him, and he called me. He said, you are an MA in English, but can't draft an application properly. Read it and correct your mistake. And he said, I went through that application, leave application, and found nothing wrong. The grammar was all right. Everything was all right. But still the headmaster was not happy with my application. And I asked him as to read the application, and he said, read the last sentence. You wrote, please grant me a day's leave or casual leave. And then he said, so what is wrong with it? He said, can't you realize that such a statement is addressed to your contemporary, not to your boss? I'm your boss. And he said, what should I write there? So he said, you should request me, like I request you to grant me a day's casual leave. I mean, this kind of consciousness is hardly found with the majority of academics that we deal with. And finally, he said, he was just an SSC, I, a postgraduate in that subject. Still, he was better than I was at English. And this is what actually I deliberately wanted to share with you. This happens because we do not take language that seriously, whether it is mother tongue, or other tongue like English. It is only, the elite class, as I said, the privileged classes that have been trained well, that use language quite consciously. They put a characteristic difference between a dialect and jargon, gutter and cant, argot and slang, etc. Now we have nowadays English in the form of SMS, EMS, email, chat, WhatsApp, etc. Technology has radically changed the structure of English. My final point is English in the subaltern context. But before that, I would like to fetch your attention to this techno language. Say, for example, this language has been completely turned into the acronyms. ATB, all the best. Hand, have a nice day, etc. And there are also certain, ambiguities possible out of this. I remember a colleague of mine had put in a message to me, and he said, I shall host 2 days dinner. I mean, he put 2 and then DAY apostrophe S. And I could not understand his message. I thought as if he was going to host dinner for me for 2 days. But I was absolutely wrong in getting it understood. So these are also the possibilities coming out of, the language of acronyms. But then you can't help it. You have to, after all, adopt it because you are going to keep pace with time. So on the one hand, we find that these are the issues of language, areas of language, and the people commenting upon language. On the other hand, we find this is also a kind of English form that we have to deal with. And now I would like to go through this lens, and it is English through the subaltern lens. I would like to begin with Kancha Elaiya. Why I am not a Hindu? I mean, that is a very radical kind of text. It narrates a lot of experiences, and that are very interesting, informative, and enlightening as well, as far as Indian culture or linguistic culture is concerned. His prior demand has been English be the national language. See, he has already said when we were taught in English, we did not understand what was being taught in the classroom. On the other hand, he says, what was taught to us, maybe through Telugu or Hindi for that matter, even that we could not understand that much. But compared to English, we understood that better. I mean, when especially it was the case of, say, Telugu language, the mother tongue. Despite this, he has always voiced this statement that English should be made the national language. Because English has become the language of linking Indian states. And on that basis, he makes such a statement. Whether I support it or not is a different issue, but I would like to quote Kancha Elaiya here. Then we have, an access to the subaltern environs which he has explored in that text. Maybe later on I shall come back to this. And he calls English the goddess of Dalits. And he has coined the term Dalit Bahujans. So he wants to Dalitize India. In my reading, he is the only person I have found voicing this kind of, statement, that too vociferously. Dalitization of our country is necessary because he believes that Dalit culture has been comprehensive, inclusive, and there are elements of equality inside it. For example, when he speaks of, let me clear it here only, he compares a Brahmin family to that of a Dalit. So he says, if there is a Brahmin who is a priest and he has been given the responsibility of performing worship or maybe a marriage, his wife cannot replace him in his absence. But suppose on the other hand, there's a Dalit family and that Dalit male goes outside, it is his wife that can replace him in his absence. She herself takes up the bullock cart, she rides it and performs every work that is left for her husband. So that is what he speaks of. That means he says that the woman of a Dalit family can replace her husband in many contexts. And that is why he finds, I mean, there are many other issues of this kind he has discussed there. Then we have...
So sorry to disturb you, sir.
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, but we are running a little short of time and we do have a extensive session too.
All right, all right.
Sorry for interrupting, but this is the wish.
All right, all right.
There are a lot of questions waiting for you too.
All right, madam. I'm ready for going for that. I shall just wind this up within maybe 5 odd minutes, okay?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Actually, this was my main focus of today's discussion. But anyway, I do understand your limitations and yes, necessities. Yes, I'm sorry. When we go to, say, metropolitan cities, we find that there's a difference between the elites and non-elite professionals. or you can call them subaltern. And then the communication going on between the two has been just like one snubbing the other, one underestimating the other, one making a fun of the other as far as linguistic levels are concerned. I remember the cultural context in which Babul Supriyo and Mohandas Pai were participants. I mean, I was simply taken aback. See, the show was going on a channel called Mirror Now, and there was discussion. There was a Kannada speaker. I do not know, but I guess maybe it was someone called Mr. Kharge. And these two people, whenever he spoke in English, these two people make literally, a lot of fun of this man. They just kept on laughing at each other, and this man went on communicating. They were laughing at his accent, considering that they were established and this man out of establishment. And that was the attempt, actually. They did, and I felt it so badly. I mean, I felt it so bad. And the anchor person was not happy either. But this happens when it comes to the cultural context. We also have the people like Dasar Bagul and Nabhausati, who are very difficult to translate. I mean, when you want to think of the subaltern language, then, for example, you will have to think of these people. It is very difficult to translate these people from Marathi into English. So, subaltern language is very difficult to, for example, manage for the people that have never been part of that culture. I also have two experiences here. Dr. Prakash Sirsak from Aurangabad, who translated this text, that is Annihilation of Caste, and he said, this, you must have read it. Arun Prabha Mukherjee also shared her experiences in her introduction to the text called Jutan. And she said, I could not translate this line, Abe Chureke, and I mentioned as it is because I could not find alternatives. Then also, Kaun hai wo Dronacharya ki aulad? And she said, I grappled for finding out a proper term, to refer to Dronacharya. I mean, aulad, I mean, that is what she says. And then ultimately she used progeny, etc. Finally, I would like to stay for a while on this context, that is subaltern language. And you would find how challenging it must have been for Shanta Gokhale, the translator, to bring about this dialogue from Marathi into English. There's a story called Livelihood by Vimra Shirvale, and this dialogue goes on there. Kashi, who's that? And Kesu Gadge says, your mummy's husband. And she says, why have you come here? Kesu Gadge says, you bloody bitch. Let's see the language. And then there's Kashi, who replies, if you had any decency, any shame, you wouldn't have shown your face here, you bastard, son of a bitch. See the last line, last words. And then Kesu Gadge, mind your language, you whore. I've come to claim my earnings. What earnings? You hadn't given me your mother's cat, had you? And this is a story in the book called Poison Bread on page number 181. The people that are never familiar with this kind of atmosphere would never be able to read this, I'm sure, even alone. But just imagine what kind of challenges Shanta Gokhale might have faced while translating that. Here I have these conclusions. I wouldn't like to read them, but then I would like to say that mostly we find that our theorists and thinkers have been influenced by the Eurocentric notions and all that. And about English, there's always a conundrum, etc. With this, again, I would like to say I am really so much grateful to say Dr. Sachin Mumbai, who created this space for me in the first place, Dr. Ram Bise, Dr. Sachin Labre, Dr. Sushila Vijay Kumar, Mr. Debraj Maulik, Miss Geeta Ajit, and every member of Eltai who have honored me with this opportunity. I do not know how far I could do justice to my role here, but then whatever ideas I had, I addressed them the way I could. With this, again, I thank you, all these people, in particular Mr. Sachin Bhande, for this opportunity, and I am really equally grateful to the august audience for this kind of patient listening they have offered to me. I do not know how it went with them, but because this is all but a technical matter, the face-to-face interaction gives you a thorough kind of knowledge about what you are doing. But then here we have been engaged in a technical discourse. So with this, again, I would like to thank everyone, and being much grateful, I take your leave for a while here, and I'm ready to face the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, so much. I mean, it has been very interesting, thought-provoking, stimulating session, lecture. There is so much that you have given us. Like, you have started with the basics of subaltern theory. You went on to the subaltern theories of Gayatri Spivak, and also where you didn't agree with her. And the reason why you didn't agree. It's something like given us something to think about. Yes, we didn't agree with all this. I think we're having a few disturbance. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Thank you so much. Yeah. So you have taken us through, the whole panorama of the studies of the subaltern studies. And also, what I liked is the way you said, you do not agree at certain points, and when you feel that she should be, there's a dilemma also where she brings in, which causes it. And also the fact where she pointed out so very clearly about Bhubaneswar Bhaduri's, the subaltern can speak, but they're not heard. And that's so true even today. And then you took us to the post-colonial theories of right from the literary and to the critical theories, and also where you touched upon English of the post-colonial, and also I liked about the post-colonial theories. I would just like to bring this out very much. Is you pointed out how every country, even Europe, is basically has been colonized at some point of the other, and yet the post-colonial theory is only put forward into the countries of India, Pakistan, and the British cover, but not the US. Nobody says that America and USA is a colonial state. So that's very, very good. And I also like the fact, it's good that all of us should think that why can't we develop our own post-colonial theory? Why do we have to follow the Eurocentric theory? It is really so true. Thank you. I'm the kind of, the sparks that you have put, I think we should all start working on it. It's really, really good. And also how you took us to the English language, and how the stalwarts like Nizam Ezekiel and Kuchru and Arkinarayan, Mulkraj Anand, how they brought in the Indian writing in English and established it. I still remember studying Goodbye to Miss Pushpa T.S. in my times, and we all had a wonderful time because we were so used to studying the English poems and talking about the strophes and the trochees, and here we have Nizam Ezekiel with this wonderful poem. So that's very nice and good. And I also liked about the fact that you brought about how, you have the problems of translation, especially the way Shanta Gokhale has translated it. Yes, it would be difficult for most of us to even conceptualize, to even write such a thing. And Also, the few of them who felt that English is, since our country is a heterogeneous ethos that follows, we have it over here, how we can be united with the English language, and yet the subaltern always has their own problems, how they are not able to understand what the English text says at the same time when it is in their own mother tongue, how it's so clarity and it's so clear for them. So the lacuna that falls with this kind of English is something that we all need to. Thank you so much. It's really, really been wonderful listening to you. Now, since we are going on to the questions, we have a lot of questions and very interesting questions. And the best part is it's from all over, not just our country, but it's beyond our boundaries, from Bangladesh, Malaysia, Philippines. So shall I start with the first question?
Yes, please.
Okay. The first question is, can a subaltern text be validated only if it is written by a subaltern writer, or can it be inferred that a non-subaltern writer will not be able to give a true account of the emotions experienced by a subaltern character? And this question is by Maumita Deroy from Bangalore.
A very good question, and I'm happy that such a question is put to me right in the beginning. Well, I would like to say, Ms. Mamita, for example, we have a man and a woman. Unless that man adopts an insider's view to realize pains and sorrows of that woman, any kind of sympathetic writing about that woman for that man is going to be hollow. But if that man is someone like G.B. Shaw, definitely that can be considered as part of that culture. I think this is okay.
Yes, your analogy is really very good. And yes, to the point, you have just hit the nail. Thank you so much on this. The next question is, what is the opinion of on the position of English in India in the light of Dalit aspirations? And this is by Dr. Sachin Labde from our very own Dr. Labde out there. And could you please just
yes, actually, when I first talked to Dr. Sachin Labde, I never felt that I was talking to him for the first time. And the way he addressed the session with, the way he steered the session with Mahesh Dattani, I had actually put my compliments to him through the message. So I'm happy that he has put such a question to me. Well, Dr. Labde, I would like to say that as Sabur Ali has rightly pointed out, English is a language that can be used as an instrument. Instrumental benefits it affords us. And if it is so, it is going to be the language that is going to change the prospects of the Dalits. This is how I look at English, number one. Second thing is that, even if we adopt, some other language, maybe Hindi or any other Indian language as the sole medium of communication, education, or dealing with, so many other factors, especially the areas of technology, science, medical science, etc. I would like to say that these languages are not sufficient for us to give us a complete understanding and access, apart from the instrumental benefits, to the areas that I have recently mentioned. And that way, I consider English is definitely going to be the language of changing prospects of Dalits. This is how I would like to respond to Dr. Sachin Labde.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure Dr. Labde would really be happy to hear that. The third question is...
just a second, please. I would also like to add something to this. See, the Chinese, Japanese, and other European countries, Chinese, Japanese, and certain European countries had completely rejected English. And now we find that there is a great race of hiring English teachers from Oxford and Cambridge between these countries, and they have realized, because the Japanese went for absolute translation of technology, but somewhere they found that Japanese somewhere fell short on giving them the kind of exploration they wanted, and that is why the Japanese, Chinese, the Germans, and many other European countries have began lessons on English, despite the fact that they dislike English. They prefer their own languages to English. They have undertaken such a task. Thank you.
Very true, sir. And I think also the BPO time, why India was so sought after by the US compared to any other. So it really proves. Thank you so much.
Nehru was right, I guess. Jawaharlal Nehru was right to give English as one of the official languages in India.
Yes.
He was a fellow of Oxford, Cambridge. So
yes, it was
we
the
can see
decision
the-
of the Constituent Assembly.
Yes.
Yes.
And the free language. We move on to the third question. What are the concerns and roles of the subaltern theory in literature? And this is by Dr. Nidhi Gupta from Chhattisgarh and Dr. Sheikh Rashid from Aurangabad. So though you have titles, probably in a textual form, you could just, once again just shorten it and give us in capsule form this answer for this. Yeah.
So what is the role of subaltern?
The concerns and roles of subaltern theory in literature.
Okay. Well, as far as this nomenclature is concerned, I am not that happy with this nomenclature when applying it to Indian context, because we can have better terms to apply. But since that is a different issue, I would like to respond to this, considering subaltern as a useful term. Yes, the role of subaltern studies has been, say for example in literature, to awaken the people to the consciousness of establishment of egalitarian values. And if subaltern writings play this kind of role in regard with literature, then definitely that is going to change the overall scenario, not only of say our literature, but also it is going to get reflected in say the social behavior, and ultimately that would somewhere awaken the people to take initiatives for establishment of say equality among them.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Just one more reminder to all the viewers. Please click on the feedback link and do give your feedback. We would really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So the next question is, comes from Mr. Dinesh Kumar Shinde from Mumbai. Can you elucidate the correlation between marginalization and the subaltern theory?
Okay. Well, I would like to say that marginalization is rather a broad term as compared to subaltern, and it easily applies to each and every victim of marginalization. Begin with the privileged classes and come to say the unprivileged ones. We cannot usually say that it is only the unprivileged classes that have been suffering from the sense of marginalization or the conditions of marginalization. Even among the privileged classes, we find there are certain types of marginalization. The levels could be differing. The intensity could be different, intensity of suffering and all that, or being marginalized. But yes, marginalization is everywhere there. And having said that, I can again relate to you that when it comes to compare marginalization and subaltern, I would like to say marginalization is a term that has a broader canvas, and it applies to each and every social segment. And subaltern, there's no guarantee that it may necessarily be having its application in say every social context.
So very true. It's really true. It's more, one is universal and other is, I think, more a subset of a lot of things. Very true, sir. Thank you so much on this. The next question is, this is by, actually, I have clubbed up many questions together. We have Ms. Christine Jane Sato from Philippines, Haruna Kiwaya from Malaysia, and Sonia Sharim from Bangladesh. Their question is, to what extent should English be the only means of instruction for the learners of indigenous community, monolingual community? And also the next question is, what are the challenges faced by English teachers in teaching in such situations?
Okay, a very good question actually. Yes, as far as English as a sole means is concerned, as I said, to mainstream these people, to streamline these people, it is important that we introduce English to them. And when it comes to challenges of teaching English, I mean, educating them in English or on English, yes, there are too many challenges, but they can also be overcome to a major extent, I sincerely believe. Recently I have produced a write-up on the teachers, and in that I said, teachers have the ability to transform a country, to transform a world. Again, I would like to go back to, say, Paulo Freire, who produced, a methodology of teaching such a way, teaching the labor class of his country, that is Brazil, such a way that his framework lasted for 41 days. And you would be surprised to know that within this span of 41 days, he was absolutely successful in making those people read and learn. I mean, the people that were quite uneducated were transformed into a literate community by Paulo Freire. So, if we have certain innovative, say, methodologies and innovative pedagogy, because nowadays we find that there are a number of pedagogies developed. For example, by the institutes like Tata Institute of Social Sciences and similar institutes. I do not have experience of other institutes. But these institutes have developed such pedagogies where the teacher can do a lot. And it is not necessary that if a specific model of pedagogy is given to you, it is not necessary that you follow it to the letter. You can also have certain modifications at your personal level that can best suit or that can remain conducive to the given atmosphere that you have to deal with. So yes, while dealing with such challenge a lot, but ultimately when guided by, say, the principle of educating them and streamlining them, there can be certain pedagogies derived, developed and adopted by the teachers of that atmosphere, and ultimately they can succeed. And I always believe where there's a will, there's a way. So that is how I would like to respond.
Thank you. So I think all of us teachers out here was really know that yes, it's possible. If Paulo Ferrari can teach English in 41 days and make them literate, I think we have a good new horizon in front of us. Okay, the next question is, can Dysphoric studies be reflected as a subcategory of post-colonial studies? And this is by Jyoti Patil from Pune.
Okay. Thank you for this question. But then I would like to say again that diaspora is again a concept that has never, been a case of my interest or a case in point for me. Why? Because that term has been a misnomer from my individual perspective. Whenever I try to understand, say, the Jewish diasporic conditions and the kind of diaspora they suffered from, I don't think that it is that appropriate to refer to, say, the context like the present ones. But that is not the issue at present. What I have to say to Ms. Jyoti Patil is, yes, anything that has co-occurrence, say with post-colonial theory, can be part of it. But as I said to you, subaltern is not as broad as marginalization. Diaspora cannot be broad at all. That is, the special reason is that, for example, we have the Indian writers that emigrate, of their own volition, and they find that there are better prospects for them abroad, and they live there. They pick up Indian subjects. I mean, living in a country which is not Indian, or living transnationally, they prefer the subjects of India, and they write upon them. And through those characters, they try to tell the people that these people have been suffering from a sense of nostalgia. Now, this nostalgia or the feelings of, say, emotional suffering, etc., are the ones that have been, produced by themselves for themselves. And that is why this diasporic literature or this diasporic phenomenon remains limited to a specific group of people that are, for example, part of emigration. So that way it can be, a component of the post-colonial world or post-colonial theory, but it cannot be a broad
Okay.
subject. Yes.
Thank you, sir, so much. Sir, just one question here. Can the early colonial writers who were British Babus and their works be considered as subaltern? And can Spivak's theory be, Gayatri Spivak's theory be applicable to them?
I beg your pardon. Would you please
This is a
repeat it?
question by Himanshu Shah. This came up in the chat box. It came up in the chat box. Can early colonial writers who were British Babus and their works be considered as subaltern? And can Spivak's theory be applicable to them?
Well, when you find the pre-colonial times, or colonial times, not pre-colonial. During colonial times, the people that were the Babus, they were never subaltern. Rather, I would call them as the privileged people. Because you work there as the officers, or maybe as the office bearers, for that matter. So, compared to, say, the general Indian context, they cannot be taken for, say, the subaltern groups as such. I wanted to, I would like to refer to, say, Untouchable, the text by Mulk Rajanand. Actually, I have never been appreciative of this text. My response to this text is what Chinua Achebe's is to the heart of darkness. Okay, that again requires a different discourse. But then, in that text, Lakha's father says to him, "My son, it is sinful for us to think of being a babu. The jobs like babus are meant for the privileged people." So if we go by the line of this expression of, say, Lakha's father, we can find that the people that function as the babus or other office bearers, particularly the babus, since the question is related to that, I would like to say they were never subaltern at all, and they cannot be considered so, because they were, after all, more privileged than the rest of the Indians.
Thank you so much. And there are still many more questions to be, they've been waiting to ask, but since we are running short of time, we are now, we will be asking them to post it on Facebook, and their questions, I'm sure you'll be able to answer to them. So now we have to, since we are really, I mean, we would love to hear you speak, because you are really so articulate and erudite in everything that you say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, madam. And I would like, please, I beg your pardon again. Your team is marvelous. And when I talked to you in the morning in the trial session, I found you people effusive with a lot of enthusiasm and dedication. And you seem to be, to me, guided by the will of doing something of great value as far as the area of education, English literature is concerned. So this is my honest compliment I would like to put to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir. Yes, I'm sure all of you, everybody's out here. Thank you so much for being with us. Because of constraint of time, now we'll move on to the vote of thanks, and I invite Dr. Vaishali Gadialji to come in and say the vote of thanks. Dr. Vaishali.
Thank you, Geeta madam. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you, Geeta madam. I feel honored and privileged to get an opportunity to propose a vote of thanks at the end of this stimulating webinar on the subaltern theory and the role of English language, a post-colonial context by Dr. Milind Pandit. I, on the behalf of Eltai Mumbai chapter, let me call it fraternity of intellectuals here together, I extend my very hearty vote of thanks to our amazing resource person today, Dr. Milind Pandit, for sharing his findings and opinions regarding the subaltern theory in the post-colonial context. I am grateful to you, sir, for your in-depth and interesting address, for updating us on the current trends in this area of knowledge, and also for satisfactorily answering all the questions of the participants, which shed further light on the various aspects of the topic. Thank you very much, sir. And we are indeed thankful to you for your wonderful compliment for our team. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, madam.
I convey my cheerful thanks to our moderator, Dr. Geeta Ajit, for gracefully introducing our resource person for the day, Dr. Pandit, and also for effectively shouldering the responsibility of a moderator. Thank you, Dr. Geeta.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I wish to express my plentiful thanks to our Eltai National Joint Secretary, Dr. Ram Bise, for encouraging us with his active and enthusiastic gesture in the successful management of the Eltai Mumbai chapter. Thank you, Ram sir. I also take this opportunity to thank our President of Mumbai chapter, Dr. Sachin Bumbe, who has been instrumental in organizing this webinar, as rightly mentioned by Dr. Pandit. Thank you, Dr. Sachin Bumbe. An event of this dimension cannot happen overnight. I acknowledge the unwavering support received from all core committee members of Mumbai chapter. Special thanks are due to Dr. Sachin Labde, Dr. Sushila Vijay Kumar, Mr. Anwar Sheikh, Dr. Meghna Chatterjee, Dr. Manjari Vaidya, Ms. Rupa Shetty, Mr. Debraj Maulik, Ms. Kranti Daibole, Dr. Swati Bise, Mr. Hemant Patni, Mr. Shivaji Methi, Mr. Pradeep Gulbile, and Mr. Samadhan Lange for their meticulous planning, execution, and coordination throughout this webinar. Last but not the least, I am grateful to the participants across the states and even abroad for their overwhelming response and active participation even in the question answer session. With this, I, Dr. Vaishali Gadiarji, sign off and seek your consent for closing this event. Thank you for being with us. Stay indoors, stay safe. Thank you. Thank you all.
I felt as if I was listening to the rhythmic news on radio.
Yes. She's an artist.
She's excellent.
She's in radio. She's in radio, actually.
I work on Akashvani, sir. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. So happy to meet you.
But I do it for Marathi language over there.
Doesn't matter, but it gets reflected even in your English
Yes.
communication.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Quick notification to all the participants. If you have any more questions, you can post it on our Facebook page. I posted the link over there. Please feel free to ask questions. We can have debates. We can have blood over there. Of course, theoretically, let's fight it over there. Thank you everyone for attending the session. The session is over. Thank you all. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thank you to the co-committee members. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vaishali ma'am.
And thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Vaishali ma'am. Thank you, Geeta ma'am, and everyone.
Thank you.
And many hearty congratulations to the whole team on such a nice organization. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.
Chapter members can stay here. The other
Okay.
participants can
Shivraj.
leave now.
Yes, sir. Okay. They're
You
leaving one
can
by
stop
one.
the recording.
Okay, sir.
Stop the recording.
Okay, sir.
You can.
Okay, Captain. Yes, Captain.
Should I stay?